What is up, everybody? So I'm back here today with another video, and this one is going to be about Parmenides, but really about his predecessors and the background in which he is operating. So let's get right into this. So if you watch my interpretation video on Parmenides, you'll see that I interpret him in the context of his predecessors. So really starting with Thales and continuing on with people like Anaximander, Anaximenes, and Anaxagoras, the Pre-Socratics were doing something radical in the history of human thought. They were reacting against these theological poets like Homer and positing a rationalistic foundation to reality. So, for instance, Anaximander posited this thing called apeiron, which he called the arche, or first principle. And apeiron is the ultimate explanatory principle of all of reality. It explains why there is anything at all, because it generates all things, and it itself has no explanation because it is necessary and eternal and simply always has been. Its explanation is, in fact, itself. It has no external, I should say, explanation. It's just always been. It's always been eternal. It's always been uncaused. But we don't have to talk about that. The main thing you need to know is that the real big radical shift with these pre-Socratic thinkers from the theological poets is that they try to explain reality in terms of a single principle, whether that be apeiron, whether it be fire, air, water, earth, as other thinkers, pre-Socratic thinkers, tried to do. Now, what's one of the problems with some of these accounts? Well, really, we have a couple problems here. The first problem, and this is going to be the argument I'm going to give, so you might want to write this down, is that if you try to explain all of reality in terms of one single principle, you may not actually be able to do that. So here's why. Take, for instance, trying to explain all of reality in terms of water. Okay, so famously, I think it was Anaxagoras who did this. So if you want to correct me on that, if I'm wrong, you can. But I know for sure one of them did. I think it was Anaxagoras. But let's take this. Let's take this for instance. So in reality, we have things that are different from each other. So we have earth, water, fire, and air. Now, claiming that water is the first principle of all is tantamount to claiming that all things are water. To claim that all things are water is, in fact, to claim that fire, earth, air, etc. are water. Not only is this empirically false, but contraries cannot be both true at the same time and in the same respect, i.e. water cannot both be and not be fire, and vice versa, because they are contraries. So therefore, water cannot be the first principle of things. And so this is really interesting, because this argument points out is that if you try to explain reality in terms of water or one empirical principle like this, it doesn't really work. You know, we can't say, oh, all of reality is reducible to water, air, or fire, because in doing so, we would be trying to explain, for instance, fire in terms of water. Excuse me. I'm still a bit sick. So, really this leads to a bigger difficulty, and that is in fact that to admit of plurality in beings, meaning that there are multiple types of being, like water, earth, air, and fire, is to admit that they cannot just be or have one single empirical principle like this. And to explain this plurality of beings, we need to invoke a differentiating first principle. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if we want to account for all of reality in terms of water, or fire or air, like some of these pre-Socratic thinkers did, and if you want their specific views, just Google their names on the Stanford Encyclopedia and go to the Stanford Encyclopedia and look up, because there's a bunch of them that all posited a lot of different first principles. And I don't want to get any names mixed up or anything. So just go do a quick Google search and look that up. But if we posit, or if we try to explain reality, say in terms of water, we need to account for fire, earth, and air. And since water alone can't do that, water can't transform into fire, what we need is a differentiating or transforming principle. We need something that allows us to go from water to fire. And that actually is going to be another principle that is fundamental to reality. And therefore, we can draw the conclusion that reality is not just water, but it's water and this differentiating first principle. So really what I'm saying is that for these theories to work, for these pre-Socratic theories to work, what they needed was not only water or fire or air, but that plus some sort of transforming or differentiating principle, which means that reality is composed really of two principles and not just one thing. And so this is going to lead into a lot of controversy. Oh, I need to get rid of this. But it's going to lead into a lot of controversy, because what you'll have is you'll have a couple of responses to this. One response is to deny, and this is famously what Parmenides does, is to deny plurality about beings. What does that mean? Well, as we'll see soon, Parmenides actually denies that there are multiple kinds of beings. So really he says that all being is one. There is no plurality. Everything is just one. This is a radical claim. But this is a way to get around this, because if we say, okay, well, all is water and all is just one, well, then fire actually is water, and it's just an illusion that we see differently or see otherwise. And that's in fact what Parmenides, a route that he's going to take with a bit of a different twist on it, as we'll see later. Now, another way to get around this is to say that, well, really, we can't really tell. It's just an illusion. We have to close off our investigation to reality. Yeah, things might look like they're just water and whatever, but we'll never know. We'll just never know. It's just all water. You gotta trust me on this one, dude. And this, I think, is untenable, because this is really just a return to the theological poets' accounts, almost, in a sense, that these thinkers were trying to get away from. So this isn't really an advance in thinking. This is just kind of going back to a fideistic account of reality. And I don't think there's really any basis for that. I don't think it's very tenable. So I think we can say that this counter objection is not going to work. So really, with this in mind, what we can think of is the main takeaway is to think that in the historical development of these thinkers, they were constituting this decisive break where they started to posit one single principle, whether it be air, fire, earth, water, or something like a pyrrhon, or some sort of immaterial infinite, or some sort of material infinite, like maybe the atomists did. They were trying to posit a single principle that tried to explain all of reality. And so with this in mind, in the next video, I want to move on to Parmenides and look at how he reacted in this context, in this Milesian, or these people were called the Milesians, in this Milesian historical context, and how he predicated or put forth his own singular principle of reality. And it's really with Parmenides that we get the ultimate genesis of Western metaphysics in its most robust form. And so I want to stress that if you want to know more about these thinkers, it's good. Check out Lloyd Gerson's work. Check out Werner Jaeger's work on them. And you can go to the Stanford Encyclopedia, check it out. But the main takeaway, as I said, is just a singular principle, and that with that singular principle, a lot of problems crop up, like how that really can't work. Mainly because in order to account for change, you have to, in fact, have some sort of differentiating principle that accounts for this change. But as we'll see in the next video, Parmenides tries to come up with a solution to this.